was younger, particularly in my elementary school years when I was like third, fourth, fifth grade, and then in middle school, I did a lot of genealogy research with my Aunt Marva. There was a local historian named Lewis Diggs who was writing a book about African American communities in Baltimore County, and he started coming around Granite, Maryland, and asking questions. And my aunt, she was a really funny woman. Sometimes you just were kind of she would annoy you and frustrate you, but I really loved her and got along with her really well. And she was kind of suspicious of him. She was like, why is he asking all these questions, writing a book about us? What is he trying to find out? Well, I'm going to do my own research. And because I was so close to her, I was sort of her apprentice, and I was also just very interested in the past and things. So she took me along with her on all of her research missions. And a lot of the initial research that we did involved looking at older newspapers and things that were said by my grandmother's grandfather's brother, who was named Gabriel Bennett Jr. He worked at Woodstock College and died when he was 100 or 101 years old. And from him, from the writings about him and the interviews with him, a lot of stuff came out that I learned at a pretty young age. So, for example, I learned that his parents, his mother in particular, was enslaved by the Jesuits. So the fact that the Jesuit priests had slaves wasn't a surprise to me. And I remember telling kids, especially in college, when I was around a lot of other Catholic students, a lot of them who had gone to Jesuit schools, I'd be like, the Jesuits had slaves. They're like, what? And I was like, yeah, they did. So that was always kind of fun to surprise people with that. So that wasn't a surprise to me. And then when I learned about his grandmother, Louisa Mason, I knew her name. And I also knew the name of her father, Harry Mahoney. And I also knew the name of Harry Mahoney's ancestor, Anne Joyce. And as a kid, with all this research and a lot of these names coming from Gabriel Bennett himself, I felt like I had a good handle on my lineage. But there are a lot of things that didn't make sense as we were doing this research. While we were doing this research, we found some documents talking about a sale of slaves to Louisiana. And we also found some things that were said by Uncle Gabe, mentioning that his family was from Algiers, and things that just didn't make sense. So Malva passed away when I was in 7th grade, and after that, I was still interested in the genealogy, but wasn't doing as much of it. But I had all of her notes and all the notes I compiled during that time. I remembered all these stories and things that I had learned from her. And when that article came out in May of last year, I hadn't really been following the Georgetown stuff. I knew it was going on, that they found out that Georgetown had slaves and the slaves were sold, and I was kind of just like, good, now people know the Jesuits owned slaves. This is what I've been saying for quite some time. I'm glad that word is out. But then I saw that article that was published in New York Times about Neely Hawkins and his descendants, and I saw that the slaves, the enslaved people, were sold to Louisiana. And once I saw Louisiana there, I was like, wait a minute, this sounds like what I heard about with Louisa. Growing up, what I had heard is that she was warned by the priests that the sale was going to take place, and that she and her mother hid in the woods for a few days while the boats were there collecting people. And then when the boats left, they came out and went back to St. Inigo's. So I went back to some of these documents that have been sitting on my computer, and I immediately pulled up this one PDF, found Louisa's name in it, and Harry's name in it, and saw that the sale was about Georgetown. The sale that I had heard about as a kid, the sale that I heard about Louisa escaping, was the Georgetown sale. So I was kind of floored about it, that all of these little things that I had heard as a kid, some of them sounded a little crazy, were actually true. I remember my mom and I would kind of joke, after, when we first heard about Algiers, I remember Aunt Malva and I looked at a map, and the only Algiers we could find on the map was the capital of Algeria. So we were like, okay, that's where our family's from. But you think about it, it didn't really make sense because it's in North Africa, and that wasn't part of the transatlantic slave trade. And then later on, doing more research after Aunt Malva passed away, I saw that there was an Algiers in New Orleans. So I was like, okay, that makes more sense, especially if this description of Louisiana, maybe that's where people were sent. I remember one of my best friends in college is African-American Catholic from Louisiana. My mom used to joke, maybe she's your cousin. She's from New Orleans, maybe she's your cousin. So when I saw that article, I was like, wow, like all that stuff they were saying, like it was true. And it's just been a journey since then, learning a lot more, learning that a lot of the stuff that I heard growing up was true, but then also some of it was just scraping the surface of, and a lot of it was really just scraping the surface of what was true. It's been quite interesting.